Imagine a cosmic fax machine. Like, just think about how a standard fax machine works.
Right. It scans a piece of paper.
Exactly. It scans a document at one specific millisecond in time, and it transmits this exact pixel-for-pixel replica of whatever is on that paper to another location. Now imagine applying that exact technology to your soul at the literal moment of your death.
Oh, wow. That is an intense visual.
It really is, because if you happen to die with, say, a smudge on your spiritual document, like maybe you're experiencing road rage or you're just, terrified about your mortgage, that exact smudge is printed into your afterlife forever.
Forever, yeah. The demands placed on the individual in this framework are just absolute. We're looking at a blueprint here that leaves, well, zero margin for human error.
None at all.
It requires this state of total unbroken serenity before you even think about stepping into eternity.
Which, I mean, is what makes today's deep dive into the source material so incredibly compelling. So welcome. Whether you're listening right now because you are seeking a fresh perspective on spirituality, or maybe you're curious about the mechanics of alternative communities, or you just love dissecting highly unique philosophical texts alongside us as the third person in this conversation, we have a really fascinating roadmap to explore.
We definitely do.
Our mission today is to examine an excerpted text titled "One Can Achieve the Spiritual State of a Celestial Being in the Second Home," which is written by an author named Su Feng. We're going to unpack this text's highly specific blueprint for achieving spiritual perfection.
Right, and it's a wild journey. It blends these ancient religious teachings with modern analogies like the fax machine you just mentioned.
Yeah, and ultimately it claims that the only valid answer to human suffering is a very specific physical location. But before we dig into the architecture of the author's argument, we really need to establish a clear boundary regarding our role here.
Yes, absolutely. Because this source material promotes a very rigid, absolute spiritual lifestyle, and it points to an actual real-world community. So we want to be entirely transparent with you, the listener. We are not taking sides.
Right. We are not endorsing or, validating or advocating for the viewpoints or the community described in this text. We're just acting as your impartial guides.
Exactly. We're simply exploring these ideas exactly as they are presented in the original source material. Our goal is just to break down the mechanics of how this philosophy operates.
So setting out on that roadmap, we have to establish the final destination. The text outlines 3 distinct evolutionary levels required to become what it calls a celestial being.
And the author notes this state is synonymous with becoming like a bodhisattva, an angel, a Buddha, or an immortal.
Yeah, so the first level is defined as the separation from suffering, the acquisition of happiness, and achieving this profound serenity of body and soul.
Right, which feels somewhat defensive, wouldn't you say?
Totally. I mean, you are actively building a wall between yourself and the pain of the world. But then the second level demands this massive cognitive leap. The text describes this middle tier as having nothing and yet owning everything.
The psychology of that second level is really crucial. It requires a complete detachment from material ownership.
Yeah.
The having nothing part.
Right.
But that's coupled with a psychological state of total universe-spanning abundance. You no longer hoard resources because you feel entirely provided for.
That's a huge shift.
It is. And that psychological shift paves the way for the third and final level, which the text defines simply as great freedom and eternal happiness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the author does something brilliant here with how we traditionally view established religion. The text explicitly claims that hitting these 3 levels matches the Christian ideal of living unmarried like an angel.
Yes, and it also claims it aligns perfectly with the Buddhist ideal of a mind without abode and being far from the reversed dream.
We should probably quickly clarify that terminology for the listener.
Good point. So in Buddhist philosophy, the reversed dream refers to the illusion of our material lives. We tend to think our waking life, our jobs, our houses, our bank accounts is the absolute reality.
Right, the stuff we can touch.
Exactly. But the concept of the reverse dream suggests that our material obsession is actually the illusion, and spiritual awakening is the act of snapping out of that dream.
And the text leverages that exact concept, but then, and I love this part, the author basically pulls the rug out from under the theologians.
Oh, entirely.
The text essentially states that the actual religious doctrines, the scriptures, the hundreds of years of academic study, like none of it matters. It's
Yeah.
like this text is presenting a universal spiritual retirement plan.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. It doesn't matter what currency you use during your working years, whether you were paying in with the currency of Christianity, Buddhism, or Taoism. It doesn't even matter if you understand the underlying economic theories of those currencies.
The only thing that triggers the retirement payout is hitting the exact behavioral milestones.
Exactly. The state of being is the only metric of success.
What's fascinating here is the author's intense focus on what they call solid evidences over empty talks.
Yeah, they really hammer that home.
They do. In conventional spiritual traditions, understanding the text and debating the theology is a massive part of the practice. But this text strips all intellectualism away.
Completely.
The author argues that no matter how much doctrine you memorize, without the lived, physical, and psychological experience of those three levels, your religion is just empty talk. It is a purely results-oriented mechanism.
You either are living unmarried like an angel with a serene mind, owning nothing and having everything, or you weren't. There's no partial credit for understanding the theory.
None at all.
And that results-oriented mindset creates an incredibly intense timeline for the believer. Because, a lot of people operate on the assumption of delayed gratification when it comes to faith.
Right, you endure the hardships of your daily life, you suffer through your trials, and your reward is a peaceful paradise in the afterlife.
Exactly. But the author attacks the concept of delayed gratification directly. The text states, in no uncertain terms, that if you have never experienced the three levels of the celestial state in the human world, if you do not physically manifest paradise while you are alive, you absolutely cannot go to paradise after you die.
The bluntness of the phrasing is striking. You cannot achieve after death what you have failed to achieve when you are alive.
Yeah. If you are in pain while walking the earth, you will feel pain in the next world.
The foundational argument is that the exact state of consciousness a person holds at the time of death decides the specific dimension they are assigned to next.
Which brings us back to the author's highly specific, distinctly modern analogy, the cosmic fax machine.
Right. They describe the transition of death as being just like a fax.
So what does this all mean? Because I have to push back on this concept, or at least, play devil's advocate for you listening. The fax machine analogy is wildly unforgiving.
It's incredibly strict.
If the fax machine is scanning your soul, pixel for pixel, at the moment of death, how does a normal human being survive that pressure? How do we reconcile this intense demand to achieve absolute perfection now with the messy reality of our everyday struggles?
And that is the big question.
Right, because you might be a generally wonderful, serene person, but what if you get a flat tire on the way to a crucial job interview and you suffer a fatal heart attack in a state of sheer panic?
Yeah, what happens then?
Does the cosmic fax machine just scan the panic and beam you straight to a chaotic afterlife, ignoring 50 years of good behavior?
Well, the text attempts to bypass the vulnerability of those fleeting emotions by grounding the process in something much deeper. The author introduces the concept of DNA.
Oh, right, the gene code.
Exactly, stating that the information encoded gene will decide everything for the future life. So in the context of the author's argument, we aren't just talking about a temporary mood swing like road rage or panic.
Right, it's deeper than that.
The text argues for a fundamental cellular-level rewiring of your consciousness. The fax is scanning your deepest, most permanent energetic baseline.
Meaning you cannot fake it. You can't just slap a smile on your face and pretend to be serene.
No, the text actually calls it self-deceiving, to think you can claim profound internal cultivation while still suffering through your daily life, hoping to magically experience heaven after death.
Wow.
The author demands that your external reality perfectly matches your internal serenity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychology of this urgency is a highly effective funnel. By completely rejecting delayed gratification, the text forces the believer to take immediate, radical action today.
It really does. It eliminates the comfort of saying, I'll find peace eventually, or God will forgive my stress.
Yeah, the author is basically declaring that the gates of heaven are locked to you unless you are experiencing heaven at this very second.
Which naturally leads the reader to a state of absolute panic.
Right, because how do you actually do that?
If the requirement is absolute, unbroken serenity right now, why is it practically impossible for the average person to achieve? And the author's answer to that question is a sweeping condemnation of the world we currently inhabit.
Right. The text argues that the secular world is not just distracting. It is fundamentally designed to block salvation.
And the specific list of barriers the author outlines is where the text gets incredibly granular. It states you cannot attain this celestial state as long as you are living in marriage and family.
Yeah, so the foundational building blocks of human connection are immediately categorized as anchors weighing you down.
The author also lists possessing anything as a barrier, entirely ruling out personal property or savings.
Which is terrifying for most people.
Completely. And then it targets the biological imperatives. The text argues you cannot reach the heavenly kingdom if you are burdened by worries about food, clothing, shelter, living, old age, illness, and death.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because nestled right in the middle of those profound existential dreads between shelter and aging is the word transportation.
Yes, transportation.
The text places the mundane logistical nightmare of your daily commute on the exact same level as the fear of death. And to add, another layer of complexity, the author lists sexual repression as a massive barrier, claiming you absolutely cannot ascend unless you have obtained full freedom of sex.
It's quite a list.
It's exhausting just reading it.
Yeah.
Trying to achieve enlightenment under these conditions is like trying to meditate on the floor of a chaotic stock exchange.
That's a perfect visual.
You're sitting there trying to achieve Buddhist nirvana, but alarms are ringing, traders are screaming, and you are simultaneously stressing about your car payment, your aging parents, your marriage, and your repressed desires. The environment itself makes the goal mathematically impossible.
I want to focus on your stock exchange analogy,
Yeah.
because the ringing bells of the trading floor represent the exact logistical anxieties the author is weaponizing.
Oh, absolutely.
The text recognizes that transportation isn't just about a car. It's about being tethered to a grid. It's about needing a job to pay for the gas to get to the job.
It is the ultimate hamster wheel.
Exactly. This raises an important question about whether we can ever truly hack the systems we live in. Some people might argue, well, what if I just stay single, rent a modest apartment, and work from home? Can I achieve the celestial state then?
Right, like finding a loophole.
But the text takes an uncompromising stance on this. The author argues that even if you accumulate wealth and position to shield yourself from basic hunger, you still cannot make yourself free of care and abode. The secular system itself is the contagion.
And the author uses a pair of incredibly visceral metaphors to hammer that point home. They compare participating in the secular world to drinking bitter, salty seawater.
It's a harsh image.
Very harsh. You might think you are quenching your thirst by engaging with society, but the salt only dehydrates you faster. It's a complete illusion of satiation.
And the second metaphor is even more aggressive. The text compares the entirety of secular society to a latrine, a reeking place full of garbage designed exclusively for mortals. The logical deduction the author offers is simple. If you want to smell fragrant air, you cannot just stand inside the latrine and spray perfume.
Right, because underneath, it's still a latrine.
Exactly. Attempting to be a spiritual person in a secular city is just spraying perfume over garbage. You must physically walk out of the latrine and relocate to a place filled with fragrant flowers and twittering birds.
So, we have arrived at the ultimate trap. The text demands you achieve absolute cellular-level perfection now to pass the cosmic fax machine, while simultaneously insisting that the secular world is a salty latrine where perfection is impossible.
It's quite the paradox.
It is. If I'm reading this, I'm desperately looking for the exit sign. Where do these fragrant flowers actually exist?
Well, the text pivots beautifully here, shifting from broad spiritual philosophy into providing literal geographical coordinates. The author poses the rhetorical question, where on this earth can people live without secular bondage?
Right. Where can you stop worrying about food, shelter, old age, or transportation?
Where can you remain unmarried like angels, own nothing, and yet feel you have everything?
Now, a traditional spiritual seeker might expect the answer to be a remote monastery deep in the Himalayas or a silent retreat in the desert, but the author explicitly shuts those doors.
Yes, they do.
The text specifically lists utopian communities, communist communities, temples, monasteries, Taoist temples, and mind-calming places, and declares that they are not the ideal venues.
And sweeping all traditional avenues of retreat off the table leaves a vacuum, which the author immediately fills. The text declares that the best place is the second home of Lifechanyuan.
We should probably break down that name for the listener. Lifechanyuan is a compound concept. Chan relates to Zen or meditation, and Yuan often translates to a courtyard, garden, or sanctuary.
So it's a very peaceful image.
Yeah, so the name itself translates roughly to a garden or sanctuary of Zen life. It is a highly specific, named, and physical community.
And by establishing this single location, the author creates a concept they call the transfer station. The text explicitly defines the second home as the transfer station from the human world to the heavenly kingdom.
I really have to push back hard on this transition because the irony in the text is absolutely glaring. The moment the author names a specific piece of real estate, they seem to anticipate the reader's alarm bells going off.
Oh, they definitely know how it sounds.
Yeah, because the very next paragraph is dedicated to intensely defending against skepticism. The author writes, "This is not an advertisement for Lifechanyuan, not a bewitching phrase to instigate people, not a hypocritical sermon. They claim it is simply an objective fact that aligns with the intentions of the greatest creator, Jesus, Buddha, and Lao Tzu."
That's quite a lineup to back your claim.
Right. I ask you, the listener, how you would react to that shift. We go from unpacking universal concepts of Buddhist nirvana to identifying the deeply relatable struggles of modern stress, and suddenly the entire universe funnels down into a pitch for a single physical address.
It's a sharp turn.
It functions exactly like an advertisement, despite the author spending a paragraph insisting it isn't.
Well, to view this purely through the internal logic of the text, we have to look at the author's justification. If you genuinely believe the secular world is a burning building or a latrine, as the text says, down to the very logistics of how food and transportation operate, then pointing to the only fire escape isn't an advertisement in the author's mind.
Right. It's a rescue mission.
Exactly. The author argues that traditional monasteries fail because they still rely on the secular world. A monk still worries about the temple's roof leaking or securing donations for the next meal.
That makes sense. They're still tied to the grid.
So the author is establishing a monopoly on salvation by claiming that only the second home has engineered a completely self-sustaining environment where the anxieties of food, shelter, and family are permanently neutralized.
Which circles back to their earlier obsession with solid evidences. The text repeatedly argues that spiritual self-cultivation has to be verified by facts and personal experience. The author is essentially saying, we have built the only controlled laboratory on Earth where the specific spiritual experiment can actually be run without contamination from the outside world.
And the architecture of the argument is remarkably watertight once you accept the initial premise.
It really is.
If you cannot attain the celestial state in the secular world, and you must attain it while alive to ensure your spiritual fact sends you to heaven, then the only logical conclusion is to physically relocate your body to the one environment explicitly engineered to produce that state of consciousness.
It leaves absolutely no ambiguity for the reader. It diagnoses your pain, sets a terrifyingly urgent deadline, invalidates your current environment, and hands you the exact map to the only designated escape hatch.
The text leverages a profound psychological draw. I mean, think about the promise of a sanctuary where all your basic physiological needs are met, where societal expectations vanish, and where you are surrounded by people vibrating at your exact frequency.
It's the ultimate promise of absolute safety.
It really is.
As we bring this deep dive into the source material to a close, I want to bring the focus back to you listening to this right now. Regardless of how you view the highly specific solution offered by Xu Feng's text, the underlying diagnosis of the human condition is incredibly potent.
Oh, absolutely.
Who hasn't felt utterly exhausted by the bitter seawater of daily existence? The relentless cycle of bills, the weight of societal expectations, the fear of losing your health as you age, the sheer grinding stress of your daily commute. The transportation the text so cleverly highlights.
It's universal.
The author taps into a very real, very deep human desire to just set down the crushing burden of modern life and retreat to a place where you can exist simply, without care or fear.
The desire to escape the latrine is universal. The divergence happens when we examine the price of admission to the fragrant flowers.
Which leaves us with a profound and, honestly, slightly unsettling question to mull over. The author insists that achieving true spiritual freedom and eternal happiness requires abandoning every single one of your secular ties.
Everything.
You must give up your personal property, your romantic partnerships, your family structure, and move to a highly specific collective transfer station managed by someone else's blueprint. So, if achieving a stress-free heavenly paradise meant handing over every logistical, emotional, and physical aspect of your earthly life to a single community, would the price of that absolute freedom actually cost you your individuality?
That is a lot to think about.
It really is. Thank you for exploring these profound and challenging ideas with us. We appreciate you taking this journey into the text today.